Well, hello everyone. It is time for another weekly overview of our 2023 chronological Bible readings. Man, we have been doing this for almost 3 months and we've made tremendous progress. This week we're in the book of Joshua and also we'll dip into the book of Judges. But in Joshua, looking at chapters 12 through 24, and then Judges chapters 1 through 7. So let's start. Judges chapter 12. We'll read about kings that the Israelites defeated as they are having the conquest there in Canaan. They've been delivered into the promised land, and now it's time to remove the people that were so pagan and so godless. And we read about some of the kings. In chapter 13, you'll read about the inheritance that the 2.5 tribes would receive, not in the promised land, but you might remember they wanted to stay south of the promised land, so they have an inheritance. Chapters 14 through 19, this is a larger section, and that talks about the inheritance of the other 9.5 tribes. So we have that. Chapters 20 and 21, the cities of refuge that were talked about by Moses, but also those Levitical cities that would be entrusted to their care. In chapter 22, we have the 2.5 tribes building an altar, and this almost brings war from the other 9.5 tribes, but they find out why the altar was built, and peace is restored and all is well, but it almost brought bloodshed and death. In chapters 23 and 24 of Joshua, we find that Joshua by this time is a very old man, and it is time for him to die. So what does he do? It's that very well-known passage where he says to the people, "Choose you this day whom you will serve, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Shortly after that, we read of the death of Joshua, and now we're getting ready for another transition. Like we had from Moses to Joshua, now we will go to what is called the Judges. So the book of the Judges, this occurs over several centuries. I think about 300 to 400 years. The book of Ruth takes place within the time of the Judges, but chapters 1 and 2 is recounting some of the details that we read about earlier in the story. But there's a very sad pattern that is quickly found out, and let me describe it this way. The people forsake the Lord, they sin, so God raises up enemies. They oppress Israel, and times get really bad. The Israelites cry out to the Lord. He responds by raising up a judge who delivers the Israelites, restores peace in the land, and things are well. Until the next time that the people forsake the Lord, go back to their idolatry, sin, and all of that, and God brings in another enemy, brings the Israelites low. They cry out to Yahweh. He raises up another deliverer. That's the pattern that you're going to see throughout this book. Now, in chapter 3 of Judges, we read about 3 of those judges. First of all, Othniel, Ehud, and Shamgar. They are serving as judges over the Israelites. And then chapters 4 and 5, we read about a lady named Deborah. And in chapter 5, the song of Deborah after the Lord gave a great victory. There's also an interesting thing in that section where another lady has a very interesting encounter with a commander of one of the bad kings. And I'll just say there's a tent peg involved, and it doesn't go very well for him. And in chapter 6, we are introduced to another judge, this one by the name of Gideon. And we're going to read a little bit about Gideon in the next little bit. So I hope that this week will be a very rewarding week as we are reading about the history of God's people. And there's going to be some darkness, but also the reminder that God is always looking for his people to repent so that he can restore them. I am so glad that we have a compassionate and merciful God, and the Old Testament is full of talking about God's compassion, grace, mercy, and love. Until next week, God's grace and peace to you.